Hey guys, it's a good song, isn't it? Hey guys, and welcome to Little Black Book 91. We are talking to you today, guys, about prioritizing the other person in marriage. Yes, you guys wanted to hear more conversations around marriage, and so we thought we'd bring you one of these great conversations around marriage. So I'm joined by This Is Marriage UK, Curtis. You've seen him on this channel before. You know who he is. You know what he's about. And you know what he brings. Okay, some depth and some interesting takes on how we see marriage and repackaging it in the right way. So we want to encourage you guys to sit in, get involved, comment, leave a a comment and chat, and also after if you watch the replay as well. But I'm gonna let my co-host get involved as well. So Curtis, how you doing today, man?
I'm good, Yeah, I think So you know what it is I've been loving what you've been doing over the years. Do you know what I mean? And I think this is before I even go into it, I think this is a period of reflection for me, touching base with a lot of my friends and people that I'm well acquainted with to encourage them on their journey. I remember you when you first started out. You're one of those guys. I know you didn't expect this, but you're one of those guys that we started off with, and I can't even see the comments, by the way. I don't know if anyone's joining. Is anyone joining?
Yeah, they're joining a bit late.
I can't see. It's
But
okay.
yeah.
And
No
I remember
comments
I
yet.
saw you starting out, and I'm just saying hats off to you for being consistent. You've got a story and a book to write, bruv, about your journey. So yeah, hats off to you. Yeah, Curtis here from This Is Marriage. You know what? I'm logged into the wrong account, but that's... Oh, no, I'm not, actually. Let me see. Yeah, bear with
You're
me,
in the
bro.
right account. That's right. You're good, bro.
Check out.
Wait.
This is why. Yeah. So yeah, man. I'm just glad to be here, and I'm glad that you will even listen to her, man. To share some of my journey. Yeah, I've been married a long time, but it doesn't mean I have all the answers. Married a long time, but still got something to learn. And although I'm talking, I'm happy to listen. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, bro. Thank you for having me on.
No worries, my guy. It's all good. It's all good. So we're obviously talking today about prioritizing another person in marriage, and I guess putting the other person first. We spoke a little bit, I guess, with last week almost a little bit as well. Serving. But when you say obviously prioritize another person, what does that mean for you in sense of marriage and relationship?
Yeah, I think it's better for me to start at this point here. Sorry about my throat.
Right.
I'm listening on the sidelines. I'm listening to a lot of people say what they say about marriage relationships or what they want. And there are some good people out there. And I think that they are in a decline. Good people. We're going in with a dream of what we want relationships to be about. We're going in with a very self-centered ideology. And as we sleep with each other and as we mingle and have fun, we're infecting each other with a lot of pain, which makes us more selfish because we want to protect ourselves. And other-centeredness is really the only thing that will work. So it's like I want people to know that the only way to make it is to do the opposite of what we have to do. And that's the scariest thing that we have to do.
When you say do the opposite, what does that mean?
Yeah. The opposite means, like, I had a good conversation with a friend this weekend, right? A couple of days ago, and we both concluded on this thing. If you keep chasing it, it's going to move away from you. So like multimillionaires, billionaires will say, like, don't chase the money. Put your energy into serving people. It's the opposite, right? Because really, you've got to chase the money. Now, we're talking about us in the West here. And they're saying, actually, providing a service is where your success is. And then somebody will get it And that's where your success sits right there. So when we're chasing the money, our ethics change. It's about self-preservation. It's about the numbers. It's about self. And my thing is saying to people like, no, it's actually the opposite. The only way in is the opposite way in. It's a bit like when you're talking about the kingdom of God, right? There's two ways into the king. There's two perspectives on it in principle. One is righteousness by works, and one is righteousness by faith. Righteousness by works is our human flesh instinct. I've got to get there. I've got to do things to get there. And on another side of Christianity, saying it's already done. I'm talking to my son about it this week, and I'm getting it in his head. His default position, just like mine was, right, is what have I got to do to be close to God? Or what have I got to do to make my way to the kingdom? So I went in so many avenues with him on the topic to say, so what you saying then? He's like, yeah, but don't I have to? No, you can't. And so my point is that we have to find the opposite route in. How do we, how do we enter in, and what does it mean to be putting the other person first, which is really the opposite. It means that our motives for getting into relationships and marriage is more often just about ourselves. It's not about what it needs to be about. So when you get there, if you want it to work, really, you can't go in with your own desires as the focus. They're on the sideline. I'll go into it more. I don't know if you have any questions for me, but the opposite is like my default position is when I get in there, like I've told you before in the live, like I've told you, like when I got in them and I was like, yeah, you know what? This is how many times we're going to have sex. This is where we're going to go. This is how many houses we're going to buy. This is a job I'm going to do. This is actually going to look. This is how we're going to talk to each other. This is actually going to cook. This is where I'm going to get it. This is how we're going to smash it. You know what I mean? That's what it was in my head at 25. It's the opposite.
Yeah, I mean, so I think you're saying is a difference, not even difference, but doing it differently, right? So when you say about how you enter into a relationship, you're saying, and similar to how we do in business, provide a service first, and then the money kind of follows, or do what you. Someone might even say your gifts and your talents, make room for you before kings and queens, right? So rather than the money is the byproduct of the calling and the gifts and the talents or the service that you provide. Whereas if you focus on the money, what happens is, like you said, is you lose your morals, you lose your centeredness, because at that point anything goes, so long as the end objective is money. But if your end product is, let's say, quote unquote, value, or the service, or let's say, quote unquote, improving people's lives, your job will always be your end product will always look a particular way. So even if, let's say, the output of, for instance, finances doesn't come about, you're still going to be happy, you're still going to be cool, you're still going to be okay, because the main target necessarily isn't the money, it's providing that service. And a similar thing, I think, with marriage, like you were saying, is, we have to ask ourselves, what is the main service or product of marriage, right? So what's the main service? What's the main product of marriage? And for me personally, the main service or product of marriage is, one, it mirrors what God has done for man. So the marriage is to mirror what God has done for man, which is the lamb marrying the bride. And then two, there is the aspect of mirroring yourself amongst your partner. So it is to almost, one could say almost like, it's almost like, I don't want to say a test, but it's like a test almost, and it says you put yourself in marriage, it's saying, let's see how other focused you can be. Because when you're single, it's all about you. But when you get into a marriage, it's not about you. So let's see how good you are at being able to serve the other person, and not think solely about you. And actually, the way to, this is going to come on talk, we're talking about the byproduct of for hopefully choosing the right person, and a byproduct of being in a valued marriage is that if I serve you, I should then be able then to have a return on that, because the other person, whilst they're being served, will want to serve me too, so long as people have the same other person focus. So that should naturally be a byproduct. If I care for you, I love you, I provide for you, I protect you, I do all those things, it should naturally, in a valued marriage, bring about what I need also for my needs to be met as well. So I'm guessing that's what you're kind of saying. Other centeredness, meaning in the sense of focusing on the other person, that should bring the byproduct of then having what you actually want from that situation. Hopefully that
Straight.
makes
I
sense.
mean, yeah, but it does. Like you're an example of this, right? Little Black Book was
Mm,
running. Whatever your motives, you were serving people first,
mm,
and then here we are, right? So that is why I'm like, this is my claim to fame, right? And those are the most meaningful people on social media who are providing a meaningful service. So this ain't rocket science. It's like it's actually the opposite of our own desires. My thing is, I'll just reiterate. There's a whole generation, 2 generations below me, say, people in their late 20s, maybe early 30s, who are looking for a criteria like my man has to earn a certain amount of money for me to respect him, kind of thing. And then you listen to maybe some of these top rappers or some of these multimillionaires, and they're going to tell you that their wives are with them when they had nothing.
mm,
It's a different set of ethics and values. And the only person I would trust is someone who's there with me when I have nothing.
mm,
So she's like, well, what my wife is saying now is, let me get behind my husband. Not that she's saying it now, she said it before, but what she's saying is, let me get behind my husband and build him so that he can build it. She's not coming in saying, I need you to have a certain amount of money before I can really regard you and respect you. Because on that foundation, what is that foundation really? When you think about that foundation, like if your woman says to you, boy, look, if you don't earn 150K, or if you can't do my hair and nails every week, kind of thing, what is she doing? She's laying a foundation, right? And it's a foundation of pure insecurity. And the thing is, people are happy to build on that, bro. People are very happy to build on, because it is a foundation. It's actually solid because insecurity has got some dexterity to it. But it's also got potholes there as well. So people will happy, look, it's something, it's something like insecurity is something that I can walk on. And it's something, because that's all I've known. I trust that. And so when I have someone, you've heard people say, look, I expect my man to cheat at some point. The foundation is insecurity. What can you build on that for real? That's having a car with the engine management light on and saying, let's go to Scotland. Let's drive 1,000 miles in this car. Let's do a world trip in this car. Where are you going? And so I'm saying that my wife comes in with me in mind. Now, understand, when I say that, that is a growing process. That didn't just happen overnight. For some people it does, for us it didn't. But comes in and shows me over time as she learns. Let's do this. I now trust her. So that's another layer of concrete. I trust it because whenever I've walked on it, it has never failed me. So I'm saying to people is, and this is the thing. This is why I'm saying to people, like, I don't need to have my own money in my marriage because I trust my foundation is different. My code is different. My ethics, my program is different because I need security. I need to know that when I lay that foundation, nothing will fall. Do you know what I'm saying? I need to know that. And so I have to have someone who I trust with me. Couple questions there. I don't know if I should go for them. I don't know.
Go for it, bro.
And it's an interesting question from Dr. BW. I don't know what that means, but hey. For those who do practice this kind of other-centeredness, I wanted to go into something else as well, but we'll start here. For those who do practice this, how do you do this without becoming depleted? So you're giving. But you understand, I'm talking about a relationship. I'm not talking about someone who is insecure and doesn't want to let go of something that's very toxic for them. I'm not talking about something where one person sees it and the other person doesn't. Now, you can be married and that be the situation, and that's where you've got to put in the work. And it is not 50-50 all the way. It's like, it's a seesaw, but it evens out over time. At first, it's a bit like this, you know what I mean? And he's like, some people are like, nah, man, I've been carrying this way too long and I'm out. No. So what I'm saying is that you really, if you're going to choose someone, you choose someone who kind of has the same kind of ethics there. My money is your money, which is not about money. It's about, we're a team. I trust you. That's what we're saying. We're saying that if you want to be with me, I need to see you naked and you need to see me naked. You know what I mean? That's what we're talking about. And so when you're with someone, you're not depleted because you're topping each other up. And if my back is cold, stand behind me and keep it warm. If I'm short today in terms of time or energy, you cover me. Trust me, you have enough. But if we're both thinking like that, but when you're married, it's a different type of journey. And sometimes you have a partner that is very self-centered. And, you know, if they want to learn, great. If they don't want to learn, it's going to be an uphill struggle. And it might not work. But it depends. Only you know the answer to that. But becoming depleted, we don't want to promote selfishness. You don't become depleted when it's just two people that really care about each other and are struggling to carry this big plank of wood. We don't become depleted like that. I enjoy putting into you. That's pretty much the answer to that question.
Yeah, I mean, I think you know, and I think that's why I said that in the beginning that, you know, choosing the right partner is also important because both parties need to be aware of the mindset. You know, of course, you know, sometimes, like I said, it can be a seesaw. No one's expecting to be 50-50. You know, but it's about being able to partner with somebody who understands giving, you know, and I think it's better to give than it is to receive is actually, again, the principle here as well. So if both parties are invested in giving and understanding that mindset, that's number one. Number two is also understanding that both our fates are tied to each other. If I sink, you sink, you know, and I think that is something maybe our generation don't necessarily like. It's like, if you sink, I'm gonna cut the rope and you're going to sink alone, almost, in a sense. And that's both men and women. It's not any particular gender at all. But, you know, it's if whatever I'm doing is going to affect you, whatever you do is going to affect me. You know, and so I think that is one of the hardest things. But that comes into play with the whole, you know, in terms of the given aspect. It's that both parties understand that mindset, which goes back to last week. What we're talking about was this servanthood. And that, you know, you want somebody who wants to serve. You need to have a mindset of serving. They need to have a mindset of serving, you know, because that puts you both in a place where there's not somebody trying to necessarily take advantage of all the giving you're doing, right? Yeah. Because oftentimes what happens is some people might choose somebody who they want to give to, but they've never given them back. And the reality is, you saw this from the beginning. Now, I'm going to be very real, people. A lot of times we see this from the beginning. Sometimes people get so caught up on maybe they've got a job that you like, or maybe they look the way you like, or maybe they sound the way you like. And so you actually begin to overcompensate. You're like, well, I just like this person so much, I'm willing to give. The depletion happens when you've never seen that person, or you've rarely seen that other person ever want to give back to you. where you know, in the early stages of a relationship, right? So, and the giving again is not meant to be exactly the same, but it's in the sense of you can see that person wants to serve you as well. Where do they serve you? How do they serve you? How they ever served you? You know what I mean? And I think that's the realest thing. Sometimes in relationships, when people get into them, you know, you're dealing with somebody, but you're so motivated to give because they have something that you like. Maybe she's a baddie, you know, maybe for ladies too, you've got the money, you know, or financial security or whatever. And you think because you're serving that person, you know, that automatically it's going to come back. And again, the preface of this conversation is choosing the right person. You know, many of us have seen situations, I'll say from a men's perspective, seen a woman who, and I hear it sometimes, women will complain saying, I did everything right, but you know, he wasn't ready for me. No, you chose the wrong person. You gave into an investment that wasn't willing to give back. You know what I mean? So sometimes what happens is people, as much as we're talking about the serving aspect, you also have to be aware of vetting that person. Is that person worthy of the serving? And the same thing happens with us with Christ. You know, when you come into your relationship with God and you come into relationship with Christ, there's a vetting process. You yourself vet, and I'll tell you how you do it, because he starts doing things for you to prove that I don't want to call it worthy, but let's put it that way, just to make it easier, to show that he's worthy of being served. So when you first come to Christ, you start seeing all your prayers are answered. When you go to church, everything makes sense. You talk to friends; they're just speaking what you read in the Bible. You go outside and things, just something happens and you're like, oh, that's God. Like, you see that God starts building the foundation of that relationship. You start seeing how he's also giving in regards to you too. So that now when you see that there's a reciprocation on your end, it's not like, oh, I'm just giving. No, it's like, well, actually really deep. And you look at your beginning of your relationship, you ask anybody, when you first got saved, how did God show you? And everyone can tell you a little story when they started. This made sense. This made sense. My mom spoke to me, and then this happened, and he did this. And everybody has that story in the beginning, because what he's done is built the foundation so that you understand that he's a giving person. Now there's a reciprocation on your end. You can say, nah, my testimony is, because you can see what he's given me. Then you can say, me too, I'm also serving in that kingdom. So there's a vetting process that has to happen before you get to that stage where you just give to somebody. Otherwise, there will be depletion as well, you know?
And you know what? Just to add to that as well, you look, I'm watching this show and Love is Blind now, bro.
Oh yeah, good show that is.
You know, the honeymoon phase can be very deceptive. But you've got to reduce the impact of being deceived by the honeymoon phase. This is men and women, but mostly women, because they tend to fall into that emotive trap. Men and women are doing very different things when they enter into a relationship. In order to reduce the impact of being hoodwinked by your own self, is to take note. Women, I'm talking to women now because I'm a man more so. Take note of the quality or the effort that he puts into building a friendship. Take note of that to reduce the impact of being hoodwinked by yourself, to making bad decisions. Kojo just mentioned you didn't choose wisely. Of course, this is happening too often. It's like, well, I don't think enough, and it's true. A lot of men are saying women are not taking enough accountability for their actions, because they end up being the ones that cry at the end of the day. But your choices are telling you what you're doing wrong. You know, you're diving in too deep. And really, it's your friendship that will carry you through, which is a different topic now, but your friendship will carry you through your long-term relationships, you know. Yeah. So, did you have anything to say, bro?
Very good.
There was something I wanted to bring up. I wrote an article though, and it was about safety, being safe in your relationship, being safe in your marriage, being safe in your relationship. And, you know, I like what Maslow's done. Maslow has said, look, if we don't have safety, we don't have anything. I work with young people. I've worked with young people for a long time, and the first thing we've got to do is get them a roof over their head, or if they're in a home that's not safe. Without that, nothing works. And it's very easy to be in a relationship that you do not trust. And ultimately, we want to say to people, look, you've got to be safe in that relationship. And it's like, well, what does that mean? Look, if you ask me, again, remembering that we're going against the grain of our being, because we're born to just be selfish. Look at children. Children are selfish. They're very self-centered. You know what I mean? Not everybody grows out of it, right? That means this: if safety, I'm saying that safety should be our priority. It means that the priority then needs to be the other person. Like, why would you go into a relationship when you're focused on how well you're going to do? That is a real problem. Your priority is to make the other person feel safe enough to support you, safe enough to tell you everything. That means that you're building this whole structure based on them. The truth is, everybody needs to be doing it though. Like, both of you need to be doing that. My focus, like, and believe me, I've taken years to work this out. That actually, forget me for a minute. Now, I don't completely forget me. I have to take care of me. But the priority is her. And her priority is me. It doesn't happen simultaneously. It happens through a lot of wrestling sometimes, you know. Me putting her first and her making her safe means that she's willing to surrender everything she has. That includes her body. In security. In a secure mindset, not in a way that says, "Oh, I'm going to do it to keep him." I need her to feel safe because I need a side of her that I trust. Goes deeper. It goes deeper. You know, everyone's coming to this relationship with some. We use a big word, the big T word, trauma. We're coming into this relationship with scars, patterns, behaviors that are totally against us. Bags that are weighing us back. Like, we're supposed to be running and we're like walking. We're dragging these things. And some of us obviously don't want to let go of it, or we haven't found a safe space to let go. Someone that we trust. Can you see me, bro? Am I still here? Yeah.
Yeah.
We haven't found anyone safe enough to help us put them down. I think the line's gone though. You still there? Oh no.
I'm still there, bro.
The Wi-Fi. We're still here? We're still here?
My Wi-Fi is moving on as well.
Okay. But you can hear me?
I can hear you. You're good.
Yeah, I think there's a bit of a delay now. Still there?
I can hear you, bro. I don't know. My internet went down. Was going mad as well. So I don't know if it's whatever.
I don't know if it's both of
but
us.
yeah,
Yeah.
it might have been. 'Cause I saw a little thingy. But go for it, bro.
Yeah, you know, what was that? We want people to
Safety, trauma.
But we're coming in with a lot of stuff. Like, Kojo, I'd ask you, like, what would make you feel comfortable to be that vulnerable if you were in a relationship?
Good question. I guess somebody who actually listened, you know what I mean? Like, if somebody somebody took the time to listen. But I guess that's no, let me just say that. Yeah, someone who listened, and just gave me room to expand. Somebody who actually genuinely inquired about myself, and wanted to actually know, and gave me room to explain my thoughts and my feelings. I wish I could bring her on, but one of the people, not I have a friend, Naomi. She's great. She's similar to myself, and we have videos every Thursday as well. But one thing that we both talk about is, I think both have a similar trauma background, so we both understand giving each other space to be able to air each other's thoughts out, and then asking follow-up questions to find out how that person is. I think one of the things that's really interesting for me personally is you can find yourself in a place of counseling others so much, you almost forget about yourself. You know what I mean? So the safety actually is in other people, also allowing other people to make you also feel safe, right? Because what can happen is you can get caught up in the safety of putting others in safety and kind of trying to take from that, but not realizing that you yourself are not feeling the same safety until you meet somebody who does what you do. You know what I mean? So giving you the room to expand, say how you feel, never making you feel stupid for having the thoughts that you have. I think the final point I make on this is I think me and Naomi were talking about this some weeks back. I got so busy with work. There was a situation that happened, and we did a video on this situation that happened. I got so busy with doing work and YouTube stuff, and I was meant to do a video with her, and I got distracted, so I didn't do the video. It must have taken like 8 weeks. I ain't gonna lie to you. Like 8 weeks later, I ain't done this work or whatever. So 4 weeks later, so I ain't done this work or whatever. So now I'm like, I don't want to talk to Naomi. I'm not gonna lie to you, because I ain't done this work. I ain't done it. I'm trying to dodge her, and she's messaging me saying, "Hey, how you doing? You're right." And I'm like, yeah, I'm good. I'm okay. Yeah, I'm all right. In my back of my head, all I can think about is, shit, I haven't done this video for her. I know that I'm meant to have done it, right? So she's like, "Hey, just give me a call. Like, I want to just sort of talk and stuff." I'm like, damn, I know. I ain't done this thing. I deserve to be shouted at. You know what I mean? I deserve to be cussed out, etc., etc. So now, obviously, we get on a call, right? And I'm waiting for the moment for the penny to drop in it. We've done a little niceties. Hey, how you doing? You good? We've done all the niceties. And then I bring it up. I said, you know what? I know I ain't done this video for you, And she's like, okay, cool. I understand. So like, what's going on with you? She's like, what's up? I said, what do you mean what's up? I said, no, like, what's up? It's like you've been avoiding me. I'm like, yeah, I mean, yeah, I've been avoiding, She's like, so why have you been avoiding me? What's going on? Like, we had this conversation, like, and let me tell you something, at the end of it, I said to Naomi, I really appreciate the fact that, you know what, you actually tried to understand where I was coming from. Now, don't get twisted. I would have deserved the rollicking. I'll be honest with you. I was ready for it. I was ready to take it. I would have deserved it. It wouldn't have changed our relationship. I'd have understood it. But she took the time to actually try to find out what were the mitigating factors to why I was there. And after that, at the end, I said to her, Naomi, I really appreciate it, man. And I said to her, do you know what the funny thing is? And I said to her, you may not, she said she was trying out something new. It was like, she said, normally she might fly off the handle, but she said she's also trying something new, like to try and give you grace, but also try to understand why they're doing what they're doing.
Yeah.
And I said to her, do you know something that, I said, you know, when you didn't rollick me, but you decided to try to understand what was going on, I said, do you know that we're not boyfriend or girlfriend, but if I was, I'd have given you the world. That one moment. That's what it would have taken.
Right there.
That would have been the one thing ever I needed from you. I promise you, I wouldn't have needed it again. That one thing that you could have done in that one moment would have made me, do you know what? Have whatever you want. I'd have run through a brick wall for you. Do you get what I'm saying to you? Because oftentimes, for me personally, people don't necessarily ask what's going on. You will ask other people what's going on, but people won't ask the same of you. So when you're saying about safety, that's the most safest I've ever felt probably in a long, long while, that someone actually asks what's going on with you, rather than just coming down on you. You know what I'm saying? So I know it's a long-winded way of answering your question, but I just want to say, I felt in that moment, what I felt in that moment was safety, was love, was grace. And I said to her, what you just did was the gospel, because what you did in that moment is, instead of actually coming down with fire and brimstone, what you actually did was say, I'm going to sit with you. I'm going to understand what you're saying. Let me ask where you're coming from and why you are the way you are at this moment. And so, yeah, safety.
Bro, let me tell you what you said there. You hit it on the head. And what you mentioned, a word that I love is grace. I mean, we hear about this word, but most of us have only heard about this word. Like, that is an integral part of the foundation of a relationship. Now, I can tell you this. Everything you said there, I can echo for myself. And one of the most beautiful things, and we're men talking to you, saying your response to my failings is key. Because what we're doing is we are programming each other. So if I'm going to stay in this relationship forever, I'm telling you how it's going to be by my reaction to everything you do. Do you know what I mean? And that programming is hardwiring.
Mm-hmm.
Like, when your first reaction to my mistakes, or your first reactions to my failure, like, oh, I'm not earning that money, or I'm not making you feel a certain way. Your reaction to it is a physical hardwiring in my brain, so that next time, now let's look at the other person who's giving off this behavior and body language. Can you be so deluded to think that? I mean, I had a friend the other day who was telling me that their partner is finding out, where are you? You better not be with that. You better not be around no girls. You better not that. And I'm like, what kind of relationship are you trying to have? Like, who actually wants that? And then, are they thinking, Kojo, this gets me, because this is the level of that person now is hardwired to believe that insecurity is security. To build their relationship around security is security. Like, holes in your tights is normal. Holes in your fence is normal. A leaking roof is life. That's how some people are. And I'm like, are you thinking, like, hold on, does this person want to be with you while you're worried about that? And do you not think that you're driving them away? How are you not thinking about that? And so the concept of safety is foreign to a lot of people. When we talk about grace, not everybody understands it. Look, we'll read about it, bro. We'll hear about it from the pulpits. Do you think people know what it looks like? This is it, Kojo. Look, it don't matter how much you study your Bible, I was saying to people, and I've said this before so many times, when I was teaching the youth at my church years ago, I was saying to them, and I brought that message home to my family, and I said, don't try to get too deep into scripture without living the little that you know. In order for you to have a concept of grace, you're going to have to sit in it, and you're going to have to get ready. Like when we say, if you want patience, God's going to give you an experience. So the whole thing of grace is the core. What does that look like? It looks like what Naomi did for Kojo. Let me tell you, like you said, bro. I mean, what does that feel like when what does it feel like when you trust something? Like, I'm supposed to be executed, but
That's gospel, isn't it, bro? I think, you know what, the maddest thing I think about that situation is, or situations like that is, and I was just thinking about it, so I wrote it down, which is, I think for a lot of us men as well, we have I was listening to a particular breakdown by this lady who spoke about this. For us as men, we are validated by our performance, we're validated by our achievements, and we're validated by competition. But one thing that's also really powerful is for a lot of men is that there is oftentimes no cushion for failure. So there is no safety net in failure. A lot of men don't have that, you know. So you're used to having to perform to make it, you know. You have to make it. You haven't got a choice. And whilst that is also one aspect can be positive in terms of the fact that you get back up and you go again, it also means that we aren't vulnerable in relationships. So when we do have money issues, a job issue, or whatever, we can't be vulnerable because it's so heavily tied to our value system, but also tied to how we're validated as men. And I think I was thinking about this over time. I was like, could I share my failures? Could I share my failures with my partner? And I was asking myself that serious question because that would mean being able to be vulnerable about the fact that I don't have it, or I don't get it, or I can't make it at this moment. Um, and can I share that? You know, and the difficulty behind sharing that is there's a fear there. Um,
Yeah.
I'm afraid of being a failure or looking like a failure because the response isn't a safe one. And I've not had that from childhood. And this is coming maybe even coming from a childhood perspective. If you want to talk about that, right? Many of us, I remember I said this, like, I remember learning from young, you know, brought my homework to my dad, maths, you know,
Not good enough.
wrong mistake. Wrong mistake.
Yeah.
Wrong mistake, right? And that fear that's induced in not getting something or not understanding something or not getting it right. Um, that fear there creates the experience that in future also leads to invulnerability in relationships because you're fearing that the response by the person is going to be one of brimstone or look of disappointment, etc., rather than being, I ain't got it, so what we gonna do? Well, what we gonna do? You know what I mean? So what are we gonna do? And we said about this last time, the language shift. A lot of us guys have not experienced, and I said this to the audience last time on another live panel. I said, when I was young, I used to make same thing I've got right now. I used to make t-shirts. Now, shout out to the girl that obviously at the time I had, but yo, she ended up throwing some of my t-shirts away rather than saying, okay, look, maybe I don't like all the designs, so let me see if I can help you and we can do it better. Nope, she threw it away. That further enhanced the fact that I can't be vulnerable again, because if the person doesn't like it or if it's a failure, that person won't support you. They'll leave you. They will insult you or they'll cuss you or they'll etc. So a lot of times as men we don't get to have, and I think it works in both ways. Sometimes we don't open up, and sometimes I think women also don't to appreciate the effort. Um, that we don't get to have that support sometimes. I
Yeah.
ain't got it. What you gonna do? Is it a we thing? Was it? Well, you gotta figure it out.
Yeah.
You know. So
Yeah.
yeah.
We want that. I would say to people, if I'm with someone, you need to fail in front of me. I need to be there. I'm looking forward to being there for your failures. Now, don't get me wrong, your failures are going to piss me off,
Mm,
but I will not make you, I cannot kick someone when they're down, or I'm not going to be with you. If we're together, you fail in front of me. And I want you to feel comfortable enough to fail in front of me. I'm not talking about complete ignorance here. I'm not talking
yeah.
about being a doormat. That's a different topic. I'm talking about in this committed relationship, I will make mistakes. I know couples where one partner is afraid of failure and they
Mm,
hide and then what they hid all of their mistakes and it caught up with them and it caused a massive failure. And that massive failure led to the end of the relationship. And That is the price we pay for laying a foundation of insecurity. So we turn it around and we say, now, instead of me doing that to you, fail here. Do you know what I mean? Fail here. Make your mistakes in front of me and watch me pick you up. Why? Look, I can't say this enough. Christ is the model. So Christ being the model is like, look, you. Oh, have I cut out? Can you see me or hear me?
Mm-hmm. You're good.
You are counting how many times you've fallen. I am not. I'm just here. And people find that hard to understand. And this part of the gospel has brought me to a new place. Because I want to emulate this, Kojo. And I'm talking to you, and I have to renew this at times. I have to renew my mind at times to say, I want that gospel to live in my house. So what it means is my children don't hide. They're encouraged. When you have failure, and when they see my reaction to their failures, because I never grew up like this. Do you know what I mean? I don't know whose Wi-Fi it is, you know. I don't know whose Wi-Fi it is. Yeah, when they see my failures, when I see their failures, I'm leaving a legacy. So this is a part of the article that I wrote about being safe at home. I'm leaving a legacy for them, for their children and their partners. I'm basically teaching my children how to be successfully married. And there's no guarantees. Is it my Wi-Fi? I hope not. I think it might be, you know. There's no guarantees that they'll be perfect or work it all out. But I can say this. That's the best shot we've got. So all of what I'm teaching or sharing now is the opposite to what my body wants to do. Let me get this phone.
I can still hear you, bro. You're good.
You can still hear me, yeah? Waiting for connection.
Yeah, you're still good.
Yeah, it's the opposite to me. That's what I was saying. We've got to go in an opposite way to what we're wired for. Do you know what I mean? Because my body doesn't want to do that. My body wants to rail up. But I'm starting to love come on now. There you go. I'm starting to love the effect is that my children will come. I grew up probably like yourself, where when you made a mistake, that was it. We were at a party yesterday and kids were running through the house and they were young kids, about 6 years old, and they must have knocked something over. Nothing broke. And then we all started laughing at each other. Us parents started laughing at each other because we would say back in the day, we would have got beaten for that. You know what I mean? We would have got cussed by somebody.
Arsenal and whooped.
Programming. Do you know what I mean? Programming. So yeah, so that won't happen in my home. The legacy is going to be different. The legacy is going to be about grace. I don't want to bring over any more slave mentality into my generation. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And, I think, I think first and foremost, each individual person, especially for us as men, I think, being vulnerable and being true to ourselves as well first. I think that's where it starts from. Before I ask for any woman to give me that grace, I probably need to give that grace to myself first. You know what I mean? I can give it to other people, but do I give that same grace to me? Because sometimes I look at some of the ways I even be hard on myself. I'm like, I don't even give myself grace. So, it can be very difficult, and that I always talk about how, vulnerability is actually your strength, because if I can show vulnerability and I can be vulnerable with myself, that's what I'm also going to expect in a partner. I won't choose somebody who won't be able to give me that vulnerability or that grace. So, quintessentially, it's important to learn how to be vulnerable so that you can also choose the right kind of partner too. Because if you can be vulnerable, you can be graceful with yourself, you'd want that in a partner too. And that's easier to spot and discern once you know what it looks like.
Yeah.
Right. So that's also important. So, I'm also aware that, at the same time that, I got to do my own little work as well in amongst that to make sure that I personally know how it looks like to give grace to myself, not necessarily to other people, but to myself, and then that will be what will be reflected also too in the kind of partner I choose as well. So, I think it's I think the realest thing, and that question now I'll even bring it up because I think that's a real thing. Um, I think for me personally, and maybe just me personally, I say, I think I need to be more. I need to be more. I need to be more open about what I'm feeling in that moment. You know what I mean? So let's say, for instance, if I fail, I need to be able to express what I'm feeling in that moment or thinking in that moment. So look, being that's an area of bringing that person into my mindset. So let's be honest. Like say, like I failed. Not my our natural reaction as men might be frustration or anger, which is a real emotion. It's part of what you're feeling, but also going slightly deeper underneath the surface of saying, listen, hey, look, I'll be real with you right now. I'm in this mode and I'm disappointed. It's not planned. It's not gone the way I thought it was going to go. I prepared for this to win and I wanted to see X, Y, and Z, and this hurts. And I think sometimes voicing out how you actually feel, and this is why I said about choosing the right partner, because you gonna voice these fear, you gonna voice something real, and someone gonna throw this back in your face. But like being real, and that's what I said about giving Naomi as an example, because it allows me to reason with the thinking that I'm having. I think the Bible says, "Come and let us reason," but it's being able to explain what's going on in the mind at the moment. So look, to say, hey, look, I'm disappointed at this moment, and being real. And I think sometimes people will take, when we talk about fear, when people talk about the Bible, when we talk about fear, they take the emotion as the behavior aspect. And I believe what God was addressing is not the emotion, it's the behavior, because one can feel fear and still go forward. It's what we mean. It's what we call courageousness. I feel fear, but I go forward. But if you feel fear and it becomes a behavior, you are paralyzed by the fear. You can't do anything. And I think that's where God is kind of addressing. It's like be
courageous.
When you're yes, be courageous. So it's like it's not like you're not feeling fear. It's the fact you keep walking. And I think one of the aspects in even dealing with a partner is explaining how sometimes I said this yesterday on the live when we were talking about Love is Blind. I said that when your partner, sometimes when people want to sort things out really, really quickly, the reason why they want to sort things out really, really quickly is because they're afraid that the person is going to leave them, or they're afraid that the person is going to dislike them, or they're afraid that that distance will create a lasting effect on the relationship. They can't handle being disliked, or can't handle the relationship not being in a good place. They start feeling uneasy and tense and anxious. So you have to almost get to a place where you're able to explain that to people. You have to almost explain what your mind is thinking so that the person knows where you stand. And that's what I said about choosing the right kind of person, because not everyone can handle when you explain what you're going through. So if I said I failed, I could say to you, listen, hey, I'm feeling like I failed in this moment because I had a particular result in mind. I wanted it to go this particular way. Right now, how I'm feeling, a little bit anxious. I'm feeling a bit fearful at this moment because I'm thinking about where the money's going to come from in this current moment. And as a man, I know I'm meant to provide, but right now, I'll be honest with you, I'm trying to think where it's coming from, and I ain't got it right now. Right now, I haven't got it. But that's how I'm thinking right now. I'm not gonna. Doesn't mean I have to wallow in it, and that's a big difference. I think with Ad, and I'll let you speak on this. But I think that's a big difference too. I'm not. It doesn't mean I have to wallow in it and be like, I'm now down here forever. Like I don't know why I'm a failure. No. It means this is what I'm thinking and feeling at the moment. It is what it is. I wanted to share that with you so you understand where I'm coming from.
Yeah, but we have, our partners, or we have to be very intuitive. The last thing I want is my lady to be hiding stuff from me because she's scared of me.
Come on.
And me as a man, those days are over for me. Do you know what I mean? I'd rather have an argument, a bad argument, than lie. than hide, than be scared. I've chosen conflict all day and every day just to avoid the lie. Again, the only way I think it works is honestly when we are living for the other person, you know. Sorry, yeah, there's a question there. Lovely. How do you allow your partner to fail but still show grace? I find myself trying to support him by fixing things. Grace means we can move on. Grace means that this isn't the end point as far as the way I'm going to treat you. Grace means it's not deserved. Not that we're rubbing that in anybody's face. Grace means I'm going to show you something that will blow your mind 100 times. Grace means you have to give what you've been receiving. So if God has been giving you that, he's basically giving you the ingredients for your relationship. If it weren't for grace, none of us would, when I say none of us would be here, what I mean is none of us would be Christians apart from those who would be afraid of God. So you've got a partner trying to fix things all the time isn't necessarily the solution. Trying to fix things all the time could be a way for you to cover up their failure. Actually, the way that you approach to solve the problem is important as well. So you don't want, you know, I guess I'm speaking as a social worker. When we're working with people, where my job is to empower them to change, not to pick up all the pieces of their mess. I've got my own to pick up, but my job is to show you the way. My job is not to get the dustpan and broom out and clean up their mess. So, but it's important. The way that I do that is the difference. Do you know what I mean? We're not talking about disabled people here. We're talking about a relationship where we have two people with full capacity. Yeah, the fixer thing we do as women sometimes, yes, but it's also an unconscious way of being ignorant to the actual root of the problem. And so it looks benevolent, but it's actually just as destructive as the problem itself.
Yeah. And yeah, I think even for me, I think sometimes solving the issue for me is it's not even necessarily fixing the actual failure. Sometimes it's just literally just encouragement. You know, it's the belief aspect. You know, that is the thing that encourages me to get back on the horse and keep riding. And I guess every man will have their own different kind of things. But for me, the biggest thing is encouragement. I'll be honest with you. You know, is that when you fail, you know, are you going to encourage me to go again? You know what I mean? Are you going to encourage me to go again, or you know, am I going to be hit whilst I'm down? You know, and
yeah,
you know, like I said, I experienced that in the last relationship, and that's not why, but part of why I exited, because I was like, yeah, that person, while you're down, they're not encouraging you at all. They're finishing you while you're down. They're body slamming you while you're down. You know what I mean? And so for me, the biggest thing there, especially, is, you know, when you've fallen, is it encouragement that helps you? Is it encouragement that's coming your way? You know, is it a word that is going to speak life into your system? Is it going to be an empowerment, you know, in that place? And that's what I need personally. Other men need different things, but I need that personally. And that is going to be one of the biggest things that will put a battery in my back, you know, to keep going, to keep on thriving, to keep on winning. And I think that is the safety that a lot of times, if I were to say, I haven't felt. Not say that from necessarily from women in general. I'm talking about in general. That's a safety that I don't necessarily feel. The encouragement, when I was a kid, that's not what you were getting.
Yeah.
You fail, you get beaten. It was not an encouragement. Like, come on, you got this. Go on. You know what I mean?
Let me ask you this, bro.
Crazy. Mm.
What does it mean for you to make someone else feel safe? What would you like to visualize? What you'd like to make someone feel like?
I mean, for me, I think the most important thing, well, number one, it's important for me to be able to feel safe, and the reason being is because that they can be their best self. Number one, right? Number two, I know how it feels not to be safe. This is a motivating factor why I want to make people feel safe.
Yeah.
But how it looks for me, oftentimes, is that person's able to be as free as possible. They're able to be as free as possible. And when people are able to be as free as possible, they're able to take risks without feeling like there's going to be a huge mitigating, kind of consequences coming their way if they take that risk. So safety for me promotes the aspect of a person being able to take a risk, without there being afraid of the consequences that are going to come their way by taking this risk. So for me, safety is oftentimes in giving people room to be themselves without judgment. It looks like, listening to people without having to try and solve their actual issue, but just listening. Sometimes it is in the sense of safety, allowing them to I guess sometimes come to their own conclusions about something, being able to be a place of rest.
Yeah.
I think that's the key word there for me in safety is it allows people to come to a place of rest because now you can feel like you're not having to perform. You're not having to try and impress. You're not trying to have to do anything that you can just literally rest in that. So for me, that's what safety in a sense is that in that way. Yeah. I think that'll be a correct term. How about yourself, Cap?
Yeah, good question. I asked that question and I wasn't ready to answer it, but I think I'm one of those people that like to see someone else happy.
Same.
But one thing I can tell you is this: I've experienced this before. I do not want a kiss or a hug or any affection based on someone feeling that they have to give it to me. That's the worst feeling. Imagine having sex with someone who is just doing it to keep you there.
Yeah.
I feel very unsafe in that. Or I don't want anything that doesn't come from I want to do this for you. I'm turned on by I want to do this for you.
Same.
You get me? And that might be a man thing as well. Like when men like to be served, it's like, do you want to give me that? Because I don't understand guys who just want their woman to just give them, like, you have to serve me, you're a woman. I can't do that because it's not, that's my wife, right? Yeah, we're talking about my wife. No, I want her to want to do it or I don't want it. Simple. So I like when someone says, yeah, I've made you a meal, or let me give you a back rub. Let me pick your toenails, cut your toenails. Let me do this for you. I love that. Who doesn't love that? This is nothing to do with romance because I'm not a romantic. I'm not a romantic. This is really about just me being a human that enjoys receiving genuine. Yeah, women too. Okay. Loves to receive genuine things. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you, bro. But I think that's, if I'm honest with you, bro, what you're describing is not always the majority in both men and women. If I'm honest with you, that's the heart of the servant. Do you know what I mean? And probably also too, the way that we're built as well. and I'm gonna say this is so funny. Yo,
Come on.
I learned something a few years ago. I learned something a few years ago, um, which is the most interesting thing. But number one, basically, I'm one of those people as well. Like I love to if I'm in a relationship with someone, I like to do things for people. You know what I mean? And I like for the person to feel free to do the same thing for me. I hate having to ask people to do certain things. You know what I mean? Like I don't want to force you to do it. That's what I mean in a sense, right? You know what I'm saying? If you want to do it, fantastic. If you don't want to do it, all right, cool. You know what I mean? Like I never want to have to make you feel like you have to do it. Um, but part of that is trauma as well as also just being what I want, right? But I remember I, I'm a big person that likes to please. I really do. Um, and it was so bad that even in and this is like I said a few years ago, I learned this in a relationship that I had, even in sex, it has to be the same way. Like if I can't be in a place where I can please a person, it's my body doesn't react in the exact same way.
It's dead. It's
I
done.
don't, it's dead. It's done. Yeah. And she couldn't understand. I was like, I don't think you understand. For me, I have to be able to serve. Like I want that same reciprocation. So if I feel like you don't really want it, I don't want it now. It's no longer fun for me anymore. It's no longer interesting for me. I'm not turned on by that. You know what I'm saying? That's not for me. So if I see that you're not really on it, it's like, no, if you're any hint of that, you're not really trying to no. Okay, cool. Let's leave that alone because it I like that serving and I like that same service back. Do you know what I'm saying? So it's like I definitely hear what you're saying on that, and it goes as far as I said as intimacy. So, I think that is something that is again both parties needed. I think that's a rarity. I don't think that's necessarily the norm, if you want to call it that.
Yeah, we're a selfish people. We're all different as well. And this is the thing. I mean, we're all coming from a different place. We're all wired differently, slightly differently from each other. But there's only one way forward, which is just the reality. We're talking about relationships, like genuine relationships, not partnerships. We're talking about relationships, and people can be married as partners. No, we are one. But the last thing I wanted to say, which is one of the last points I made, was this: it takes time to make someone feel safe. So be patient. We can hold hands and honeymoon ourselves for 1, 2, 3 years, maybe. Get married, kicks in. Reality kicks in. And you start to see what the problems are. They can be perceived as red flags, which is another topic for me. That's another topic. And people are seeing the worst of themselves and others. And my thing is like, be patient. Remember what grace is. Study the Christ model, which is for me the only model to look at. To work this out and know that the person that you're with, just like you, has issues. Take your time because change takes years. I remember working in a care home. This is my final point. I was working in a care home for adults a few years back. And there was a guy there. He was 52 years old. He had a very low learning age. He was probably learning age of like about a 10-year-old. You couldn't tell until he started to talk, but he looks like a normal person. Does his shaving, looks after himself, clothes. Couldn't tell, but he was afraid of getting on the bus because he's afraid of kids. And I said, I said to one of the staff, you're just gonna have to leave him and just let him do it. She goes, Curtis, some things take time. And you have managed to get him on a bus, but we can't force that change. Yes, he needs to do it, but we can't force it. When you're married, you're gonna have to work that out. That's the best thing you could do. Both of you need to work that out. It's easier to do that than split up and do life by yourself. Yeah, so that's my encouragement. Like, be patient with the change. because we're not here for a fun, fair ride. We're here because we've got a kingdom to build. Yeah, man. Dr. BW, though, welcome.
Thank you.
Go for it. What's your
Thank you for
question?
this. Thank you for this. My question is, what was the moment for both of you that made you shift or pivot or realize this? Did you always have it growing up? Were there people that you witnessed demonstrating this? And for those who don't have it, who are looking to build that skill, what resources or what can they do to learn this?
Wow. The way you speak. Very intense.
Why? Thank you.
It's a compliment. I don't know, Cole, do you want to go first?
I mean, I'm a bit of a weird one, if I'm honest with you, because if I look at the situation for me, it's always been there. Always been there. And that's why I said about, I think some of us is a gift to serve, you know. I think the first moment I remember is probably been about maybe about 7 or 8, if I'm correct, maybe a little bit younger, maybe also. I remember this thought. I remember asking myself, saying to myself, how come dad doesn't cook? Because obviously in an African house, most of the time women cook, right? So I asked myself, why doesn't he cook? Because he does actually chef. He was chefing for a while. So this guy can cook. Like this ain't like he can't cook. He can cook. Like he can cook. Like, you know what I mean? When he cooks, he cooks. So I asked myself, why doesn't he cook? And I remember the prevailing thought was, well, that's not fair. So I've always had a mindset of, I guess that's why I end up being a bit of a justice warrior as well. That mindset, which is why I said I don't think it's necessarily something that has been built in me. It's not something that's been necessarily taught. It's something that's been given to me. It's a grace that I always look at things in the place of, you know, am I being fair and am I serving? Am I giving what needs to be given? You know. So for me personally, it is a gift. I think the other aspect to your question, though, in terms of how men can get to that space, is actually sitting and listening. Because I think a lot of times, as men, we don't get the opportunity to sit and listen to how things affect other people. And sometimes as well, because we're not sitting and listening, what we don't do is we don't pick up some of these particular knowledge pieces, right? Because it's not the most important thing. What's the most important thing is money. Let's be very real. Okay. And I always say this, like with money, men can attain everything they need to attain, you know? So there is no point working on emotional aspects if you can get a woman just to settle with you just because you got a couple grands, a couple hundred grands or whatever, 100 bands. Why would you want to work on your emotional aspects? Why would you want to work on being being a person of servitude when, you know, the world praises you for being a man of stature or finance or whatever, wealth or power? So I think for us as men, the biggest thing that I've seen that changes us is the same thing the Bible talks about. Faith cometh by hearing the word of God. When you listen to things, it changes your mindset and prospect. The first thing is getting men's bums on seats to listen. And that's where the change will come from for them, you know? Wow. But I'll let Curtis jump in.
Boy, you know something? I mean, I look back at my past, probably similar to Kojo, I don't know. There was no positive influence when it came to this. I had never seen Grace until I saw what it was about. And you have to understand, my parents grew me up hard, but they loved me, as with most of us. But that doesn't explain what grace looks like. It didn't look like anything. It's a concept that was only existing in books and sermons. My eldest now she'll soon be 20, but when she was about 9, She and I were in the living room. The sun was setting on a Saturday night, and she said, "I'm not going to heaven." And I said to her, "Why?" And she said, "Because I'm not good enough." And I'm like, where did she learn that? And that day I decided that I'm going to do Christianity differently, because I cannot have someone who is the living dead, if you know what I mean.
Right.
And that opened me up to say, actually, I need to evaluate the whole thing. Like, what did she subconsciously receive from this home and from her church environment?
Right.
What that made me do was say, what does she need to see the difference in a completely different gospel? And it meant that I had to show her and not just tell her, right? So then that made me start to question, oh, whoa, what am I showing my wife? You know, what am I showing myself? Even now I have trouble showing grace to myself. I'm very hard on myself,
Interesting.
you
Interesting.
know, but I will give it to other people, which is, really nice to do, but it's not good enough. I guess my growth has come because I've been desperate to not. I felt, I feel like my brain is in a cage at times, a cage of old doctrine
Yep.
that isn't true.
Yep.
And I've questioned God intensely. What do you mean when you say X? And I think God wants us to go out and challenge him. Question what it means when whatever he says. Question those concepts, critique them. I think God is open to that. Reason why I'm saying that is I have made a decide. I'm very intentional about everything I do. So I'm saying I need my children. I need my children to be better than me. Number one, I want to see my mom. My mom passed away about 12 years ago. I want to see her again.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. And, I'm not. It's okay. And I say that to say that she's asleep. She's at rest. So that's fine. But I need everyone listening to know that a lot of people I know have a belief in God that I just think is the opposite. Because our parents have let us down, because the only concept that we have of God is for our parents, right? So a lot of us are struggling. There's a lot of single parent homes out there, especially in the Black community. So how are we going to know who God is? And it's really just my desperation to just be true to what he has made me for. And that search and that desperation has meant that I have seen what it is.
Thank you for sharing. I'm curious about what you said. Two things that you hinted at about your upbringing and the contrast to you now being a father, and how sort of you said a phrase about your upbringing that can mean a lot of different things to people, especially with African households. Did you have examples that now, as a father, you are implementing in your home and you're implementing as a husband? Or do you have role models in the community that you've been blessed to meet and to learn from? Or did you seek counseling? Because you and Kojo, while you're at the same destination now, you've got different paths. And then the second part about that is you said something about you feel like your head is banging in a cage with old doctrine. Powerful. I think a lot of people will relate to that because we were raised in a household where, for example, I would wake up, first thing I would do like 3 a.m., boiled the water for everybody. I slept on the floor in the kitchen. I ironed everybody's clothes, cooked porridge, and then after everybody was eating and done, then I bathed and then we're out the door. My brothers slept in a bedroom with a bed. My mom had a bed, and I slept on the floor. Cement, cockroaches, whatever it was. And coming back home, first thing was, I wasn't allowed to do sports, came back, cooked. My whole life was service. So as women, it's drilled into us to serve and to always be caring for the home. But then there's a doctrine in there which was about not having grace for myself.
Yeah.
So I also feel like a lot of times I'm banging my head in a cage with that old doctrine of not having boundaries or a space where I say, this is for me and it's okay. So I'm interested to hear about you. What is your cage? What is the doctrine you're banging against and you're struggling with? And how does that affect you now in your journey?
I think my job has helped me a lot. I work with children and families in social work. And I've seen people who have come from a similar place to you turn their lives around real quick. I have firsthand experience. So what that means is that there's hope. When I look at my dad, who is one of my best friends, he was a hard man at one point, and then he turned it around in one day. I remember he just changed, and he is like my younger brother now, in effect, calling me up for advice and wanting to hear from me.
Wow.
And I don't know why that happened, but he had his moment. And this has turned into a counseling session now, Are you charging me or am I charging you? I don't know.
Hey, we're all learning. We're all learning here.
Okay.
I serve the community. We're all learning. I'm learning from you as well.
Yeah. And so there were, like I said earlier, there are still, a couple of guys in my life maybe who I could say are of influence, but that's after the change of mindset. But what when I'm talking about what's happening is, like a plant that's in a pot. Let me give you an example. So when I moved to this house a few years ago, there were lots of plants that were left in the garden. And there was a particular plant, it's a yucca plant. So like a tree, it's like a palm tree kind of thing. And it was in a big pot. It was probably about, 2 feet wide. And this plant grew real slim and just had a few leaves on the top. And I was curious as why is this plant like this? So curiosity, number one. Number two, a year went by and I'm like, I'm watering this plant. What's wrong with this plant? And you know what I did? I said to myself, look, let me kill this plant and put something else in the pot. And I pulled the plant out of the pot, and it actually, when it was still in the small pot, as big as this. Okay. And the roots, the pot was although it was plastic, it was the roots had become just a stump. And so the plant is responding to what's underneath. So I'm very aware that what people say or the way people behave isn't necessarily what's going on. There's probably more going on the inside, right? And this plant, I took it out, and I had to. It took about half an hour to rip this plant pot out of the roots to allow this plant to grow, right? And when I looked at that plant, I said, "This is me." There's doctrine in my mind that isn't true, but it has been presented as truth. Like I have been told since a child that I'm only so good. Not only through words, but through actions.
Wow.
This is what I was telling Kojo about the programming. We are hardwired with information. You know, we pretty much come out almost as blank sheets, but we're hardwired with information by our parents' reactions, school, racism, discrimination, poverty, all of that. We're told, you just said it, you were given a value. How do you change that value system? Let me tell you what I did. I put that plant in the front of the house and it's growing. Okay. It's changed. And that meant that there was a sudden, no more will I be in this small container. Now, I'm a Christian, so I'm not talking about other religions here. I'm just saying I will no longer be contained by lies. So it was a decision. I'm saying this to some of the closest people to me. See, I'm blessed because I have great people around me. I've made a decision a few years ago, no more. And my children will not pay a price in me saying that. Everybody else will. My children and my wife, you know, we're not paying a price for that. That decision is actually going to free us. And so I'm saying to someone like you to say, you've already paid unnecessary amounts of yourself to that, the false ideologies. How much more do you want to pay? Today, you can just cut that and just say no more. Revalue yourself instantly.
Wow. I thank you so much for saying that, because this is the doctor being also the patient. You know, I thank you. I received that and I hear you, and thank you for sharing your story, both of you. A lot of us in this community, I think our hearts are there. But much like both of you, we want to arrive at the same destination, and struggle to figure out how. And what I've heard from you, which is what I share, is I had to have a moment, and I was 8, where I almost died. And I was sitting outside and looking at just the madness and toxicity and dust. There were no roads, the shacks. And then there were these kids my age playing oblivious to what was going on and what was ahead of them. Nothing. We had trash everywhere. I lived in a slum community. And there I was, almost dying and sick and couldn't get care. And when you are raised in such a space or a way where you're part of a doctrine, or you're in your own toxicity, or wherever anyone's journey is, whether it's they're in relationships or whatever it is, you have your stuff. You have to find that moment in your life where you say, this is madness, and I want different. And then you need to choose different every day, whether it's prioritizing people, and whether it's showing grace for yourself, loving others, serving others. It's a journey, and there's no time limit, because this journey continues even in heaven.
You know something that got me thinking differently as well, actually, I just remember, is I know a lot of pastors, a reasonable amount of pastors, right? Some I know so well, some are good friends. Let me tell you something. Some ministers are going through some hell, but they're preaching a gospel of deliverance. Now, what's that got to do with what I'm saying? Like, I remember saying to Juanita, my wife, his name's Juanita. I said to her years ago, I said, I will no longer preach something I'm not living. And if I
Amen.
preach something I'm not living, I'm going to tell you that I'm struggling with that thing.
Amen.
You understand? Now, what am I saying? I'm saying I'm just going to be honest about my journey.
Mm-hmm.
There is no more performance here.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So my kids are not going to hear me preaching a gospel on the stage that they have never seen.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want my wife, the back of the church, just looking at me thinking, him? Really? You know, that Kojo, that's not going to happen.
Right.
That was happening.
Mm.
That's
Thank you
embarrassing.
guys so much. Your journey is your ministry. So thank you for sharing. Thank you so much for your time and for having me on this chat.
It's been lovely.
Boy. Thank you, Dr. BW. Appreciate it, man. I'm gonna let you have the last say, Curtis, on this, because I think it's been a good conversation. We've
Appreciate it.
dived in some deep stuff, man. And it started off with talking about prioritizing another person, and sometimes that can also mean prioritizing yourself, to be able to prioritize that other person, So, but let me get your final thoughts on today's conversation and some takeaways for the audience.
Going back to relationships, our value system has to be the only one that works. If you look at what you're looking for in a relationship, and this is what you want, and this is your criteria, you make sure that you have the evidence to back up what works. But if I may point you to the one that works is the one that looks at the other person first. With a heavy dose of wisdom to say, choose rightly, like Kojo said. Once you've chosen wisely, it's about the other person for the rest of your life. And if two people are thinking like that, you have a successful relationship. That has its ups and downs, but it will always have the ups. And that is the foundation for being safe and being well. Amen.
Amen. Yeah, listen, I think it was a good conversation, and I think everybody needs to what everyone can take away from this is be focused on be focused on both the other person and yourself. Serving is also first yourself and then the other person. So if you haven't served yourself, what I mean by serving yourself doesn't mean get yourself a plate. What it does mean though is let's make sure we're good. Let's make sure we're all right. Let's make sure that first of all, we're healed. Otherwise, we always end up in a place of receiving. Maybe we can talk about that another night. But when you're wounded, you only want to receive. You don't want to give as much. And so I think what's important is that, that as an individuals that we hear this message, first and foremost, how can I serve?
Yeah.
I think like you said from the beginning, it's front to back to front. So how do you do this thing? It's like thinking, how best can I make your life that much more easier? How best can I serve you? And actually, that's the gospel in itself is in a nutshell place that I believe in. I love Galatians 3. Well, I should say the gospel, but what God is doing for us, Galatians 3, verse 11. And I love it in the Message Bible because it talks about how, walking in faith is trusting and believing what God has done for you and is doing for you, that he has a plan for you and you walking simply in that plan. That's it. It's not about who can be the best Christian in terms of how much good deeds can I do. You might think that, but actually the reality is the walking in faith is simply being able to trust he has a plan. I'm going to follow whatever plan he lays out for me. So yeah, in that instance, that's what I would say for that. But audience, thank you so much again. Once more, we appreciate you for turning out. We'll be back on in an hour's time. I'm gonna interview with Ready to Love Blake, so we're back at it again, back to back. We look forward to seeing you guys as well. And hopefully we can next week we can break it down some more again, and we'll have a bit more longer next week as well. So much appreciation for turning up. Like, share, subscribe. Click on that bell button for notification of uploads, guys. We appreciate you. Stay locked, stay loaded. We'll see you again